Previously on an anthology of dark internet murders.
Kevin went on the dark web. It's like decoding the unknown, except really dark and horrible. Get your shit together. Struck his mother in the head with a crowbar before slitting her throat. About an hour later, he did the same to his grandmother. Then he took to Discord. Oh, shit. This got intense. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 40 years. Lu Xiao Mao Mao Zi. Lu Xiao Mao Mao Zi. Okay. Oh, Kevin, no. Don't do this. If you're an internet person, don't do this. It's a real bad idea. God, people are pieces of shit on the internet, aren't they? What the At this point, you're probably asking yourself, what the actual fuck I was, Kevin, so allow me to explain. But this entire incident opened a couple of large debates across China. What? Why you doing what? And shooting her in the abdomen. And that he wanted to die. He told the police, y'all did a bad job at shooting me. He's for murder. It's murder. It's murder. You gotta move to Lebanon. Let's go. What is going on? This is weird. So weird. Oh my god. Okay, dude. I forgot this was a Casual Criminalist.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Casual Criminalist. I, as always, am your host. Welcome. In this show, as always, Kevin. I mean, not always Kevin, but one of my writers, in this case Kevin's written me a script. It's another anthology one, an anthology of dark internet murders. I think the last one did really well, so we'd revisit it, which sounds very fun, doesn't it? So let's just jump in and explore it together. We had a lot of fun last time we did one of these videos. In fact, we had so much fun that by 20 minutes into the video, you'd forgotten it was a Casual Criminalist episode. Oh, did I think it was that the one where I'm like, oh yeah, Decoding the Unknown? And everyone's like, Simon, do you have enough channels? You can't even remember which channel you're actually presenting. And I'm like,
never enough channels. There must be more.
More coming soon, by the way. Let the rumor mill swirl. Just before we get back into today's episode, let me talk about something that is an absolute game changer in the underwear world, and that is sheath underwear. I know what you're thinking. Underwear. It's been around for a long time, Simon. How's sheath going to be any different from me? Well, let me ask. Ever find the boxer shorts too loose? Ever feel like briefs too tight? Where sheath, they fix all of that. I'm wearing a pair of sheath right now. I got a nice clean pair of sheath right here. I wear these every day. They're particularly fantastic if you're going to the gym, by the way. Just keep everything nicely in the right places. Also comfortable to sleep in, which is also nice. They have this multi-pocket system for all of your different man pieces. So your man pieces go in this dual pouch system, which keeps everything separated, cool, comfortable in the summer. It's just perfect. Also, if you're not feeling that, you could just wear them like regular underwear as well. Look, I was skeptical about this at first. Sheath sent me some. I tried them. I like them. Now it's basically all I wear. My suggestion to you, buy one pair, see if you like it, you probably will, and then you'll order more. Plus, they've got sheath made out of new materials like bamboo and mesh for extra cooling comfort, because as I'm recording this, it's August, it's pretty hot outside. Plus, they're the official sponsors of the UFC, so you know that they're legit, so head over to sheathunderwear.com, grab the most comfortable underwear you'll ever wear, and use the promo code CRIMINALIST to get 20% off your order. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code CRIMINALIST for 20% off. Thank you to them for sponsoring, and now back to today's episode. I've got some bad news for you, Simon, but that's not going to happen this time around. Not only are today's stories much darker, but they also involve children. So if you need to take a break and go and record something else instead while you mentally prepare for this, now's your last chance to turn back. Nope, this is the first thing I'm recording today, Kevin, and there's no turning back now. I've begun. Activate compartmentalization mode. I have to say, my compartmentalization is pretty good. Like, the episodes have to be pretty goddamn horrific for me to be like thinking about them for a while. Like the usual, run-of-the-mill murder, dude murders woman. every day. But like when it's like, oh no, Pedro Lopez, it's like I'll think about that for days and my compartmentalization fails. Or maybe you'll just take a break halfway through. I don't know. I'm not your boss. With that out of the way, it's time to begin our descent into the murderous depths of the internet. The imperfect alibi. 32-year-old Natalie McNally was living a rather peaceful, pleasant life in the town of Lurgan in Northern Ireland. She'd earned a law degree before switching paths and getting her master's in marketing and business from Queen's University Belfast, eventually getting a marketing job at TransLink, the area's public transportation provider. I had a similar path, although the other way around. Started off doing a business undergraduate. Marketing was a part of that. And then I went on to do law afterwards. So there we go. I never got a job in transportation, though. or in marketing. Yeah, I'd be terrible at I mean, I say that I'd be terrible at marketing. I was never particularly good at it at university, but now I kind of realize that what I do and how I make money is marketing. Is everything marketing? So much stuff is marketing. Besides her job, Natalie was very involved working as an activist. Some of her activism was related to better public services for people with type 1 diabetes, a condition she had suffered with since she was only 3. But most of her activism was dedicated to fighting for women's rights and the LGBT community. Well, Natalie sounds like a nice all-round person, doesn't she? I was reading in the news yesterday, or 2 days ago, about those... Do you guys know that there's some group who I don't want to name because I don't want to give them any more publicity, but there's a group who will go out and sit on motorways for a cause, which is insane and makes no sense, and they'll just disrupt people's days. They did this on the M25, which is London's big orbital motorway, and a few days ago, 4 of them were sentenced, and the lead dude who was organizing, blocking the motorway just by sitting there, got 4 years in prison. And I was my mate was talking about it, and I was trying to guess, how long was the prison sentence. And I was like, if it's less than 6 months, I'll be disappointed. Fully expecting it to be less than 6 months. Bro got 4 years in prison. Don't block motorways and ruin regular people's days. It's not going to do anything. And now there's a pretty heavy precedent for nice long sentences attached to that. So don't be a douchebag. Everyone who knew Natalie described her as being very happy with her life. She lived in Lurgan with her dog and 2 cats, had a loving family who were known and respected in the area, and she had a new boyfriend, 33-year-old Stephen McCullough. How old was she? Didn't she just graduate university? That's a bit of an age difference. Oh, I'm sorry, she's 32. Oh, we were just talking about her university. That was ages ago. That's normal. The two had been together for only a few months, but they already had a baby on the way. Natalie was 15 weeks pregnant, and she couldn't have been happier. I mean, yes, but also, is that really the right way of doing things? I know a few people, and I have to say, it generally works out well for them, but it's not the norm. Who've had kids really early into a relationship, not intentionally. And it's, I don't know. I don't think that's the best move, to be honest. But I mean, you do you, Natalie. You seem like you've got your together, so that's fine. Her parents, Bernie and Noel, were happy as well. Much happier than I'd have been if my daughter was that far along in a pregnancy with a man she'd only be dating for a few months. Yes. Kevin and I, in same page on that one. I'll be like, no, you've made a huge tactical error. No, pregnancy's wonderful. Children are wonderful. Oh, God. But you are now that person who you've known for a few months. Until that kid's 18, you are very much now... I've started watching a TV show called Ozark, and the guy described it as business partners, after he's breaking up with his wife or whatever, but they need to be together because they've got kids. And he's like, we're business partners now. And I'm like, that's a good way to describe it. You've got 18 years of business partnership together now with someone you've just known for a few months, raising those kids. And also then afterwards for a long time as well, way less intense, because obviously the kids become adults and you don't really have to deal with each other that much anymore. But still, you're going to have to. You're going to know that person for the rest of your life. But apparently, Natalie's 3 brothers were all more careful than her boyfriends because this was going to be her parents' first grandchild. They were thrilled at the prospect of grandkids, plus they thought that the couple was really in love. Well, they thought Natalie was in love anyway. Bernie and Noel had barely even met Stephen by this point. On the night of Sunday, December the 18th, 2022, Natalie was... Oh, this is super recent. This is literally a year and a half ago. Natalie was visiting with her parents to watch Argentina defeat France in the World Cup finals. Fascinating. She was a huge soccer fan and would frequently spend time with her parents as their home in Craigavon was just a few minutes away from Lurgan. After the game, it was time for Natalie to head home. She had a much anticipated Christmas vacation coming up, but she still had to work the next morning. She had a doctor's appointment scheduled for 3 days later to find out the sex of her baby, which Bernie was going to accompany her to. So, Natalie, why isn't Stephen doing it? Isn't Stephen the boyfriend and Bernie's the father? Why is Stephen not in the picture? He's already not in the picture. Come on, Stephen. Wait, was Stephen really the boyfriend? Yeah, Bernie's the dad. Why isn't the boyfriend going? So Natalie packed up a car with wrapping paper and said that she'd give Bernie a call on Monday or Tuesday before driving home. Why? Because Christmas holiday's coming up. Okay, so she's going to wrap some gifts. Once she got home, Natalie took a look at social media. As you do, there was a Twitter post from Stephen saying that he was going live on YouTube soon with a special holiday stream of some GTA 4. Wait, is this guy actually a successful streamer? Is this his career? Or is he just like a random person tweeting that he's going to go live on GTA 4? She liked the post, and he texted her asking her to wish him good luck. Bro, you're streaming GTA 4. How much luck do you need? You playing it competitively, my dude? She did, then said she might take a peek at the stream a little later. Steven's YouTube channel had over 35,000 subscribers, but it wasn't a full-time job for him. Nah, it's not your full-time job at 35,000 subscribers. I mean, it might be soon. Like, 35,000 subscribers is a lot of subscribers. He's definitely making progress. His channel was mainly focused on collectible toys, specifically Doctor Who, and a lot of BattleBots content as well. I don't know what BattleBots are, but it seems very weird that you would stream playing GTA 4 on the same channel that you would talk about collectible toys, specifically Doctor Who and BattleBots. They should be on different channels because YouTube's going to get confused. Welcome to the Casual Criminalist, where Simon gives YouTube advice. He uploaded videos consistently and had a couple perform reasonably well, but in general he struggled to get more than just a couple of thousand views. He also wasn't really a streamer, and this was his first stream in over a year, with the previous one having been the first stream in nearly a year. Even at the height of his streaming, which was already years in the past, it looks like he barely averaged one stream per month. A lot of his other work involved producing, directing, and appearing in other digital content, but his most official job was as a part-time assistant audience editor for the Belfast Telegraph. It seems like this guy's got his shit together as well. What's going to go wrong? I had to look up what that job is, because it sounds like a combination of SEO, running social media, taking reader feedback, and so on. Yeah, I'd figure part-time assistant audience editor. It just means someone who posts on social media or something. For print media like the Belfast Telegraph, it basically sounds like the job is to be the young person who can impress the old people with a basic understanding of modern technology and current trends. Regardless, the point of all of this is that a stream was a special event that Steven had planned. It wasn't a typical Sunday night for his channel. The next morning, Natalie didn't show up for work. If any of her co-workers were... Oh, he's setting up an alibi, isn't he? He's making an alibi for himself. He's faking it, because obviously you can fake something that's live. You see all those live channels on YouTube where it's coffee shop, jazz. And you're well, it's obviously not being performed live. It's someone playing on a PC somewhere that's streaming it, making it appear as if it's live. If any of her co-workers were aware she was pregnant, then they may just have attributed a potential tardy arrival to a particularly brutal bout of morning sickness. But as the hours dragged on, that would have become less likely. She also wasn't answering her phone, which was unexpected and a bit concerning. It wasn't just work that Natalie was ignoring either. She also wasn't answering calls from Steven. His home in Lisburn was only about 20 minutes away, so that night he decided to go and check on her to make sure that she and their unborn baby were okay. They were not okay, and no sooner had Steven arrived at her house than he called the emergency services. There was blood everywhere. Natalie had been viciously beaten and stabbed to death. Steven did it. Allegedly, if he didn't. I apologize, but I think he did this. I think that stream that he set up, he's doing that. So there's thousands of people watching, a couple of thousand people watching, where he can be no, look, I was there streaming. But he recorded it ahead of time. Let's see. When police arrived on the scene, Steven was promptly arrested, because of course he was. Everyone knows that 90% of the time it's the boyfriend or the husband, and he was the person to find the body. It would be irresponsible of them not to take Steven into custody, and these cops were surprisingly on the ball. I know on this channel we frequently wind up hitting on local police for waiting on the FBI to come and fix things, or I guess the NCA, since this was taking place in the UK. NCA, is that the National Crime? I don't even know what NCA is. National Crime Authority? Maybe? I was going to say National Crime Office, but that's obviously not NCA. They're not as famous as the FBI, obviously. There's no TV shows about the NCA. Or maybe there are. Is that what Scotland Yard is? But these police honestly did a really good job throughout the entire investigation. How nice and refreshing. In the initial interview with Steven, he was able to show them his YouTube live stream. It had started at 6 p.m. and run until just after midnight. Natalie's time of death had been determined to be about 24 hours before her body was reported, right in the middle of the time that he was live. When asked about anyone that might have hurt Natalie, Steven said that she had an ex-boyfriend who had recently been harassing her. Given his alibi and the potential lead he offered police, Stephen was released from custody the day after being taken in. The following day, an unnamed 32-year-old man was arrested. It's possible that this was the ex-boyfriend that Stephen had mentioned, but there's no way to be sure. I can tell you that the ex was definitely looked into, and it was incontrovertibly proven that he was nowhere near Lurgan on the day of the murder. Yeah, why would you give them a potential suspect who you have no idea, assuming Stephen did it, you had no idea that they might have an alibi? I feel like most people would have an alibi. Would they? I don't know. I spend all my time every day, working hours, in my office, alone. So it'd be really hard for me to have an alibi. But anytime I'm at home, it's like I'm going to have an alibi. My kids are like young, but my wife's going to be there. Oh, there's a security camera in my office. I'd be shown on my security camera, like pottering around. For the second arrest, the police held a press conference. They already had announced that Natalie's death was suspicious, but this time they gave more details about the cause of death, as well as adding that she had been pregnant. Of course, they asked for information from the public as well, but this wasn't your typical, if you or anyone you know has information about this, please come forward sort of request. I mean, they said that too, but they had a much more specific request as well. Police asked for anyone who owned a dash cam and happened to be driving on Cleln Road between 8:45pm and 9:45pm on the night of the murder to come forward with their dashcam footage, as they believed someone may have unknowingly caught the murderer on camera. Wow. This is a good police work. I like this. I wouldn't really have thought of that. I mean, I'm not a policeman, so it's not really my job to think of stuff, but I feel like I've done enough Casual Criminalist episodes to have an idea of where investigations go, and that's some really clever policing. The next day, they released CCTV footage of a man they believed to be the murderer walking down the street and approaching Natalie's home. In the weeks that followed, little information was released about the case publicly. There was another arrest of an unnamed man who was later released, but it didn't seem to be amounting to much. On Christmas Day, Natalie's family held a wake for her, and the day after was her funeral. Several hundred people attended her service, with thousands attending vigils for Natalie and an end to violence against women, the sort of event that she would have been likely to partake in herself. But while little information was being released to the public, the police were doing plenty behind the scenes. They had already obtained over 4,000 hours of CCTV footage and had been able to piece together nearly the entirety of the killer's journey. Yeah, dude, you live in the UK. Does he live in the UK? Where do we say he's in Ireland? If he's in Northern Ireland, he's in the UK. If he's in regular Ireland, then he's not, obviously. But in the UK, and I assume regular Ireland is like also pretty similar. There's a lot of CCTV cameras everywhere. They also recovered the murder weapon, which was a knife that had come from inside Natalie's house. There had been no sign of forced entry, and this attack seemed very targeted, so it was their belief that the killer was someone close to Natalie, who she would have felt safe letting into her house at night. The case seemed to be dragging on, but police later revealed that it took this long because it was a highly complex case in terms of evidence collection. In their guts, they almost certainly knew Stephen was the killer, but they had already let him go once, so they didn't want to arrest him again until they were sure that they had enough evidence. One of the things that made him appear so suspicious to the police was his behavior seemed incredibly strange for someone who had just lost his girlfriend and unborn child. His social media showed him continuing his life as if nothing had happened, and he never once called the police to ask for an update on the case. To be fair, I've always said that I don't put a lot of weight on things like that, as everybody grieves and handles death differently, and honestly, I'm not sure that bugging the detectives for updates would be particularly helpful for either party, unless he had new information that could be of use to them. Yeah, agreed. I think this is kind of fair. People deal with their grief in different ways, but also, police have like a really good gut for things. Like, they'll have seen stuff before, and with this one, they might be like, this is a little bit weird, isn't it? And they just have that police feeling from doing things so many times. Besides, Stephen had an alibi. He was live on YouTube to an audience of, well, I don't actually know how many people were watching him live, but it was more than zero, as evidenced by the chat. There was a funny thing about the chat, though, and about the stream in general. In addition to your basic introduction, the first 10 minutes or so of the stream was dedicated to explaining all the technical issues that Stephen had been experiencing while trying to set up his stream.
Well, because this streaming software is kind of up the left, it means I can't check the live chat, which is a real shame. So, by all means, talk amongst yourselves.
I mean, that's not unusual. Like, I stream once a week on another channel. And it's like, yeah, technical issues are a part of streaming. Especially if you haven't done it for a year, you'd be like, oh, for God's sake, what about this? What about that? It was a long list of lies. I mean, complaints, but the upshot was this. Stephen said that because his computer sucked and OBS was acting up, he'd be unable to read chat during the stream. That's already a bit weird, as interacting with chat, even if it's just to make fun of them, is one of the main jobs of any good streamer. Otherwise, what's the point in bothering to watch live? Stephen even acknowledged that he could choose to look at chat on his phone occasionally, but that he decided against it because he hated streams where the person was just talking to chat, which again is kind of half the point of a stream. Why do you think just chatting is consistently the most popular category on Twitch? His other excuse for not looking at the chat on his phone was that if he used his phone, he'd just start scrolling through TikTok.
And also, if I go on my phone for too long, I'll end up just scrolling through TikTok, and the amount of time that I've lost scrolling through TikTok.
What, while live on a stream? And that brings us back to the evidence collection that I mentioned. A lot of the investigation was spent waiting for the results of digital forensics, who were meticulously examining the electronic devices of everyone involved, retrieving data that a lot of people don't even realize exists. Things like a complete log of every time a phone was unlocked or swiped open, and of course, deleted files. On Stephen's computer, they found a video file that was just over 6 hours long, containing the entirety of the stream. By itself, that wouldn't necessarily be weird. It's not uncommon for streamers to make a local recording in case something goes wrong with the VOD. However, this video was originally recorded days before the stream, and it was deleted as soon as the stream ended. This meant that Stephen wasn't live on YouTube at all. He just had a 6-hour pre-recorded video streaming on his channel that could serve as the perfect alibi. You know, as long as nobody on the police force knew the first thing about computers. It's like, yeah, dude. The police are experts on computers, my dude. Also, you don't know how to permanently erase a file? Come on, use your brain. But delving deeper into the video, it's even worse than just a fake stream allegedly meant to get him away with murder. He also seemed to have filled the stream with Easter eggs regarding the true motivation for the recording. Dude, don't add Easter eggs into recordings that are supposed to be covering your crimes, you clown. How stupid do you think the police are? And to be fair, maybe you listened to Casual Criminalist and was like, I don't know, police are pretty dumb sometimes. But not in this case. A little over 3 hours into making the video, Stephen took a 10-minute break. That's not to be unexpected, especially since he was drinking heavily, but it seems like his timing was intentional. This break would have aired from about 9:15 to 9:25 p.m., believed to be the exact time that Natalie was being murdered. Near the end of the break, the background music and live stream back soon title card vanished, instead being replaced with the poster of the James Bond movie, No Time to Die. Dude, how stupid are you? At another point in the video, Stephen was complaining about the physics engine, saying that whatever happened in-game would abso-fucking-notly happen in the real world. He then paused and said, abso-fucking-Natalie, while chuckling to himself and smiling at the camera.
Abso-fucking-Natalie. Abso-fucking-Natalie.
Bro, maybe you shouldn't have been drinking. There are probably other supposed Easter eggs as well, but I'm not sitting through 6 hours of gameplay to find them. When asked about this by the police, Stephen said it was totally normal, it's not, and that streamers pre-recorded their videos all the time. They don't. When an internet performer records themselves for publication at a later date, we call those YouTube videos, like the one that you're watching now. Hello there. If you're listening to the podcast, Kevin just left you out. If you're listening to the podcast, why not leave a rating on Spotify or a review wherever you get your podcasts? Thank you so much. Though he admitted to recording the video ahead of time, Stephen said that he spent the night at home getting faced. This, even though he was supposed to not be drinking alcohol at all, in solidarity with Natalie, who was unable to drink for obvious reasons. There was another interesting recording found on Stephen's phone as well. Though he had barely met Natalie's family before her murder, he spent a lot of time at their house afterwards, trying to ingratiate himself to them by playing the part of the heartbroken and grieving boyfriend. That's some psycho right there. You murdered their kid, allegedly, and then you're like, yeah, I'm just going to go spend lots of time with the family of the kid I murdered. That's fucked up. However, during one of these visits, he accidentally left his phone at Bernie and Noel's house, recording audio for 40 minutes as a sort of makeshift bug. It's believed that he did this to determine whether or not they suspected him of Natalie's murder. On January the 31st, Stephen was again arrested, and on February the 2nd, he was officially charged with murder. Yes! It was at this time that a lot more evidence began coming out, parts of the investigation that the police had hidden from the public. In addition to the things I just mentioned, there was also a lot of CCTV footage. Police had shown a single clip of a man walking down the street, but cameras caught the man boarding a bus towards Lurgan, walking down a number of streets and arriving at Natalie's carrying a rucksack. There was even footage from inside the bus showing the man sitting almost motionlessly, except to take a sip of Coke. Unfortunately, he had a hood on and was wearing a face mask. COVID days, yes! That's good for criming. so the person couldn't be identified by their face. At one point on this journey, the man dropped some money. He removed his black glove to pick it up, but beneath the black glove was a yellow marigold glove. Though gloves are a great, though not infallible way to conceal your fingerprints, technology has come a long way. Where glove prints were once deemed useless, they can now be used to generally identify the material and often even the brand of glove being worn. And there happened to be bloody prints in Natalie's house left behind by marigold gloves. I mean, that's very circumstantial evidence, but it's pretty damn good, isn't it? This is all extremely strong evidence that the person in the CCTV clips was the killer. But was there any way to tie it directly to Stephen? Not from those videos, but the person's journey continued from Natalie's house to downtown Lurgan, where he got into a phone-a-cab taxi that he had ordered using an app. The taxi picked up the person outside of the pub, but the passenger requested to be dropped off at a different address than the one it entered in the app. He claimed that he had to go see his sick mother or some other bullshit. Obviously, the goal with this was so that the phone-a-cab wouldn't have a record of where he was really dropped off, but there was still a record of the ride taking place. It also turns out that taxi drivers have both GPS and eyes, so the cabbie was easily able to identify Stephen as his passenger, as well as identifying the location where he dropped the passenger off, which was Stephen's house. Since there was a record of the ride, the company was able to confirm that the passenger had been dropped off at 11:13 p.m, and thanks to those data logs recovered by digital forensics, it was shown that at 11:16 p.m, Stephen's phone was manually swiped open for the first time in over 5 hours. Yeah, Stephen seems to have thought this through a little bit, but not enough. It's like, I feel this is the thing where people are like, oh yeah, I can get away with a crime. And then they do all this careful stuff. They wear like the gloves, covering the gloves. They take the public transport. They wear the mask. They wear the hoodie. They're very careful. They have an alibi set up. But it's like, there's still stuff that you forget about that will get you caught. Although he has been charged with Natalie's murder, Stephen has not yet gone to trial. Well, I'm glad I said all those allegedlys then, Kevin. The trial is set to begin this September, possibly around the time this video is finally released, so until then, he is only allegedly a murderer, but the evidence, of which there is a lot, does definitely not look good. Of course, this does all leave one simple question. Why? What would possibly be Stephen's motivation for allegedly murdering his pregnant girlfriend? It's quite possible that Simon just said, or at least thought, that it doesn't matter what the arsehole's motivation was and to strap him in the chair. That said, the purported motive is simple jealousy. I mean, no, I do want to know what the motive is, if for no other reason than like curiosity. I mean, he murdered someone. I don't think he should be executed. But yeah, my speculation is that he met this girl, he got her pregnant, he wanted out, and because he's a psycho, he sees the best out as murdering her. The reason we know he's a psycho, allegedly, is because he goes and hangs out with her family afterwards, which is fucking weird. It's claimed that on December the 15th, 3 days before the murder, Stephen unlocked Natalie's phone and saw WhatsApp messages between her and an ex-boyfriend. Later that same day, he recorded his fake livestream. The prosecution argues that sexualized contact with her ex and with others over a period of time was the catalyst for the murder. The terms used are pretty vague, but the implication that Stephen allegedly murdered his girlfriend of a few months for talking to other people is not. It's also worth noting that this wouldn't be the first time something like this had happened. In 2019, Stephen's then-girlfriend alleged that he hit her after seeing something on her phone that he didn't like. When interviewed by police in 2019, Stephen admitted that he hit her, but basically said that she had it coming. Oh, brilliant excuse. Why'd you hit your girlfriend? Oh, she deserved it. Not a good reason, Stephen. That was apparently good enough for the authorities, as prosecutors decided to not go forward with the case. His ex-girlfriend eventually withdrew the allegations, but again, he still admitted to getting violent with someone he was dating because he didn't like what was on their phone. For the time being, we'll just have to wait and see what the verdict is. When the trial begins, it's expected to last 3 or 4 weeks. Until then, Stephen is being held without bail. It's being argued by the prosecution that even though it failed, he had a sophisticated plan to avoid suspicion and is capable of deception beyond imagination. I don't know how accurate that is, and it seems like the judge denied him bail for the same reason he had a job, because a lot of old people don't understand technology. Wait, why does the judge still have a job? Because old people don't understand technology. You still need judges. If there was AI judges, I'd be like, oh shit, dude, what if it hallucinates my crimes? Aside from being deemed a potential flight risk, as far as I can tell, the main factor for denying bail was that because all the evidence is technology-based, so surely there'd be a way for Stephen to tamper with or destroy all of the evidence that's already been collected by the authorities. You know, because he's good with computers. Wow. They really think Stephen, the same guy whose technological prowess is recording a stream and then making it seem like it's live, is the same guy who's going to hack into Scotland Yard and delete all his evidence. Wow. That's not really how that works, and I question how tech-savvy he actually is, but I'm not going to lose any sleep about him being locked away until the trial either, especially since I suspect he'll be going right back to prison once the verdict is declared. Yes, me too. I think that's exactly what's going to happen, but allegedly, in my opinion. The disappearance of Chyenne Kircher. On October the 13th, 2011, 14-year-old Chyenne Kircher didn't show up for school. Oh no, Kevin, no, I don't like it. 14 years old? Like, it's bad that the last girl got murdered at 32 while she was pregnant, but this girl is 14. At first, this looked like a normal case of a girl who ran away from home. To start, she'd left a note that read,
"Dear Mom, don't try to look for me. You won't find me. I'm just not happy here. Love, Chai."
The note was in her handwriting and didn't appear to have been written under duress, which certainly suggested that she was a genuine runaway. And even a cursory investigation would have provided plenty of reasons why she might have done so. Chyenne's home life was dysfunctional, to say the least. The small house in East Dubuque, Illinois, was home to more people than it could comfortably fit. There was Chyenne, her mother, Laurie Lyons, her stepfather, Terry Abbas, her two brothers, and her mother's boyfriend, Steve Staver. Wait, what? There was her mother, her stepfather, and also her mother's boyfriend. Wait, so the mother had her, got divorced, remarried Terry, and is still married to Terry. Is still married to Terry, while Steve lives in the house, who's her new boyfriend. What is going on in your life? Although it was her stepfather, Chyenne had always referred to Terry as dad, and she had never met her biological father. But there was much more than just this unconventional collection of people that led people to call Chyenne's life dysfunctional. When police initially began investigating her disappearance, one of the first things they noticed was how horrible the house smelled. There was trash, dirty laundry, dirty dishes, and open, presumably spoiled, food containers everywhere. One neighbor recounted how Chyenne would be kicked out of the house and locked out for hours at a time on a nearly daily basis. When she was locked out, she'd often spend time with those neighbors who cooked her meals, knowing it was unlikely that she'd eaten recently. Neighbors and teachers alike noted how Chyenne always appeared disheveled and unwashed. School wasn't necessarily better for her either, although she liked attention and desperately wanted to fit in. She was incredibly socially awkward and was in special education classes due to a mild learning disability, which led to some amount of bullying from other students. So there was reason that she might have run away, but there were still a few details that didn't make sense. Her jacket, shoes, and most importantly, phone was still in the house. Chyenne was described as being glued to her phone, which I originally was going to say makes sense for a 14-year-old, but honestly, that's true of most people at any age these days. Yeah, dude, preach. iPhone sends you that scary thing each week where it's like, you spent this amount of time on your phone daily last week, and it's like, it's embarrassing. That's so much time. I make myself feel better, but like most of the time I just got I'm watching a YouTube video sort of in the background, just listening to it, or like a YouTube podcast, but still. Even if she left the phone behind for fear of being tracked, she would have still needed shoes, and with winter fast approaching, a jacket would have been nice too. But aside from those suspiciously forgotten items and the goodbye letter, Chyenne hadn't really left anything behind to act as a clue, at least not that the police realized. They searched her social media, and it was mostly normal 14-year-old girl stuff. She had a couple of YouTube channels. First, Chyenne, 2010, and then She Love 2011, but police didn't see anything unusual in these. Unfortunately, that's only because they weren't looking hard enough. Uh-oh. This is all about people with YouTube channels. There was one thing they discovered when examining her browsing history, and that's that Chyenne had appeared to be talking to older men from all over the country. These men were looked into, but none of them were found to have anything to do with her disappearance. Yeah, but it's indicative that she might be talking to some other older dude somewhere else who has come and abducted her. And that was the last lead the police had. Some of the details seemed suspicious, but there were no obvious signs of foul play, so the case was just largely written off as a runaway missing person case for the next 2 years. Like I said though, the police weren't looking at Chyenne's social activity hard enough, but admittedly, I'm working with the gift of hindsight here, so I don't want to be too critical of them for missing things that might only seem obvious in retrospect. Yeah, I also can't, I don't have hindsight yet because Kevin hasn't told me what they find, but I just look into those videos really thoroughly, but let's try and be honest. I'm going to try and be honest about whether I think this is something I would have spotted. To start, there are those conversations she was having with older men. Okay, well, I think I already commented on that maybe there were conversations going on other platforms that the police hadn't found yet. No details were given, but if they were of interest to the police, then we can probably all guess what kind of conversations they were. Even if the people she was talking to weren't involved, that doesn't make this information any less important. It's very common for people who experience some sort of abuse or trauma to actively seek out ways to reenact that trauma as a way of helping them cope with it. It's not generally considered a healthy coping mechanism, no shit. But the compulsion for victims to repeat their trauma in a setting where they feel they might have some sort of control over changing the outcome is well known. If Chyenne was talking to a lot of older men, it might have been in the police's best interest to take a closer look at the older men in her life who had the opportunity to hurt her. Yes, and that brings us back to her YouTube channels. Most of it is weird and doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's also pretty much what you'd expect from a 14-year-old in the earliest days of YouTube. Some of the videos only feature Chyenne, but she would also perform skits with her brothers as well. Terry could frequently be seen in these videos too, but not because he was part of the skits. He was just there, working at his desk, and the house was so cramped that there was nowhere else for anyone else to go. When he got involved, it was mostly just playful banter with Chyenne, and it all seemed relatively harmless. All until the very last video on Chyenne's channel, a video that might have served as a warning of things to come had it not sat in total obscurity, almost completely unwatched for the 5 months between the upload and the disappearance. Well, I'm assuming that the detectives on the case watched all of her YouTube videos, at least on 2-speed. Chyenne had prepared a skit with her older brother, and she began streaming on YouTube. The video opens with her sitting on her bed, saying that she was bored and contemplating what to do. She then looked at the camera and loudly declared, "I know what I can do," before standing up. Presumably, this was supposed to be her brother's cue, but instead, it was Terry who walked in. As soon as Chyenne saw him, her bubbly on-camera persona disappeared momentarily. She grabbed his arms and tried to quietly mumble a warning to him, but her audio was still picked up clearly. "I'm on live, so be careful." He said okay, and the two quickly reverted to their on-camera personalities, engaged in a brief slap fight. Eventually, her brother joined the video as well, and it went back to the normal, somewhat incoherent content that she was used to creating. If there wasn't a murder thing about this, you'd just be like, well, it's like when you answer the phone, and you're on speakerphone, and you say, like, just let you know, you're on speaker, it's just polite. Like, if someone walks in and be like, "I'm live," that's completely normal, but when someone goes missing, maybe something worth looking into. Would I have picked up on it, honestly? Dunno. I'd have probably thought it's just someone saying that I'm on speaker. But the quiet warning from Chyenne to Terry as he stepped into her bedroom shouldn't have gone unnoticed in the investigation, especially as it occurred only 23 seconds into the video. What would have been much easier to miss, but no less unsettling, were the hints from her older brother that he might have known what was going on. In a previous video, in which Terry was working at his desk in the background, her brother said, "That's that creepy guy that lived downstairs." Oh, I mean, my stepdad, Terry. Again, it's like, if the person wasn't missing, it just feels like it could be a joke, but now it takes on a whole fucking darker meaning, doesn't it? And in the final video, when Chyenne started showing off her Michael Jackson shirt to the camera, coincidentally, right after Terry walked back into the room, he said, "Yeah, she's into a child molester." Of course, it's unclear whether he really did know something, or if it was just teenager making rude comments. Unfortunately, none of this was scrutinized by the investigation, and since there was no other evidence, the trail went cold. As time went on, however, an increasing sense of concern began to mount. Even though she was essentially the textbook example of a child who would legitimately run away, fitting into every high-risk category for runaways, to disappear so completely was unusual to say the least. After a few weeks, or definitely a few months, there should have been a phone call to her grandparents or a Facebook message to one of her friends, something to let a person she trusted know that she was okay. But there was nothing. Yeah, it's because she's not okay, Kevin. She's definitely not okay. In June of 2013, nearly 2 years after Chyenne's disappearance, a special task force was created with police from 4 cities in the country, as well as the Illinois State Police. The task force wasn't created specifically for the purpose of finding Chyenne, but she was going to be the first case. To start, they wanted to take another look at Chyenne's friends and see if anyone knew anything. This led to 2 hugely important discoveries. The first was that some of Chyenne's friends now revealed that she had confided in them that Terry was sexually abusing her. The second was that her best friend in the world, the person she was considered to be inseparable from, had moved to Wisconsin. Police believed, or at least hoped, that a friend's family had taken Chyenne and moved her with them to Wisconsin. But in order to find out, the investigation was going to need to cross state lines, which meant it was time to get the FBI involved. Good. FBI, really super competent. An agent went to Wisconsin to interview the friend and bluntly asked her, "Where's Chyenne? She's here, isn't she?" Her friend immediately broke down in tears and said, "She's dead." Not because she knew anything the police didn't, but because if Chyenne hadn't shown up yet, then it seemed like the only option. And after speaking with the girl, the FBI agent was convinced as well. The home in Wisconsin had been their best chance of finding Chyenne alive, and they no longer believed she was just a runaway. But there's still no evidence. Authorities had no proof that Terry had abused Chyenne, nor could they prove he was responsible for killing her. Their only hope in advancing the case was either to find her body or to get Terry to confess. There wasn't enough manpower to keep Terry under constant surveillance, so instead they put a tracking device on his car. They hoped that, given the increased interest in the case, perhaps he would return to the body and move it to better conceal its location. Once the tracker was in place, agents watched from a laptop as Terry went for a drive to a gas station, then across a bridge into Iowa, at which point the tracker stopped working. There was no way to know whether Terry had found the bug and tossed it over a bridge into the Mississippi River, or if it had fallen off on its own, but either way, they would no longer be able to lead them to the body. With that option gone, all they could do was bring in Terry for questioning. Wow, that sucks. I don't think it would just stop working. If you found a bug on your car and you knew you were doing crimey stuff, wouldn't you just attach it to another car? Or wouldn't you be like, oh, Actually, more realistically, if I was in Terry's position, which is a brilliant thought to think about, isn't it? I'd be like, oh my, and I'd leave it exactly where it fucking was, and I'd drive to somewhere really boring for a reason that I could come up with later. Like, oh, I just really needed to go to this store in another state. Like, you gotta just pretend that you've never found it, and then go to move the body with a rental car or something. He was given a polygraph test, with some reports saying that he passed and others saying that he failed. The results of this test were irrelevant anyway, and not just because polygraphs are bull. After the test was administered, Terry was taken to another room to be interviewed further. Inconsistencies quickly started appearing in his story, and he finally broke down and confessed to everything. Well, sort of anyway. The first confession was full of half-truths to try and absolve him of some guilt, but eventually, the police got the real story. The day before her disappearance, Terry took Chyenne into the woods behind their house. After having sex with her, he strangled her to death with his bare hands. Originally claimed that he dug a hole to bury her in afterwards, but he eventually confessed that he had dug the hole the day before. As if that wasn't enough evidence of premeditation, there was also the note Chyenne had written for her mother. I think it's time. This is one of those ones where I'm like, yeah, in the last one, I'm like, we don't execute the guy. But I'm up for executing Terry, I think. He's like a child molester, a murderer. Let's execute him. The world is better off without Terrys. Terry had Chyenne write the note a month before her death, telling her that they were going to use it to prank her mother. That never happened, and he instead had been saving the note for this occasion. He agreed to take police to Chienne's body, which was buried just 100 yards from the family home. Terry pled guilty to murder, aggravated criminal sexual abuse, and concealing a homicide or death. He was sentenced to life in prison, and none of the reporting mentions a possibility of parole. I can only hope that this because there is none. Nah, there probably is. They'd say life without parole if it had been specified, which is a shame, because other than the death penalty, Terry should be in prison for the rest of his life. Until he dies. I know this story was a little rough, Simon, but brace yourself, because today's final story is going to be a whole lot worse. Dude, he molested and murdered his 14-year-old stepdaughter. Bruh. Like, you got some Pedro Lopez for me, Kevin? I already don't like this. Amanda Todd and the Daily Capper. People much younger than Simon, or me, might recognize the following image. It's a, weird doll. I don't know. This is from a show called Crashbox, an educational show produced on HBO in 1999. Oh my god, this looks way older than 1999. What the f***? It was a stop-motion animation show that took place inside a computer or something, and the show targeted grade school kids who were outgrowing shows like Sesame Street. One of the recurring segments on the show was called Distraction News, which is where the above image comes from. In these segments, I feel like Kevin must have got the date on this wrong, because I know Kevin and I are roughly the same age. I think Kevin's a couple of years older than me. Much younger than me. What age is oh, okay, so maybe grade school is younger than I think. I was kind of thinking grade school, like 11-year-olds. But that would be and then you have lower grade school. Grade school, maybe grade school is what we call primary school. That would make more sense. One of the recurring segments on the show was called Distraction News, which is where the above image comes from. In these segments, the newscaster, Dora Smarmy, would read off random educational tidbits while all sorts of random bull kept on happening on the screen to distract you. At the end of the segment, Dora then quizzed the viewer with 5 questions about what she had just reported on. That is a great way to trick kids into learning something. That's very clever. I like that. Honestly, this seems like a really stupid idea. Kevin and I apparently on completely different pages. You're challenging the kids to remember something rather than just being like, hey, remember this. If you make things a challenge for people, they're gonna it kind of gamifies it, which helps people learn. Or maybe it just helps me learn. Like if I have to learn something to teach it, I'm gonna learn it way better than if I was just learning it because I had to learn it. While there may be specific reasons that a person would want to practice focusing on something while surrounded by distractions, in general, this isn't a good way to learn. Wait, also, I feel like you do need to learn something when surrounded by distractions, because most of the time you are surrounded by distractions. Life is full of distractions. There's your phone. You're probably in an office with co-workers, or you're a student with classmates and they're constantly distracting you. I think this is a great way to learn. I don't ever remember showing up to school and having my teacher say, today I'm going to teach you how to prove the Pythagorean theorem, while these dogs bark at a screaming child and somebody puts on a laser light show. And yes, this will be on the test. No, but there's always Jeff across the room who's like, yo, Kevin. You're like, shut up, Jeff, I'm trying to learn. And then Jeff's throwing a pencil at you or whatever. While I question whether or not distraction news was successful in teaching literally anything, a lot of people have fond memories of these segments and of Crashbox in general. But for others, the above image is the stuff of nightmares. Yeah, it is very creepy. Not because stop motion animation is inherently kind of creepy, but because of the YouTube show that used that image as their backdrop. Dora's news anchor voice was replaced with a horrible early 2000s speech-to-text voice used to narrate a show called The Daily Kappa.
Meanwhile, another girl from Blonde has been talked about.
In this context, a kappa is a person who takes screen caps. Specifically, the show was about people taking screen caps of predominantly underage girls who had been convinced to expose themselves on various cam sites. On YouTube? Whoa. Holy shit. The capping community was highly organized, working together to target girls who they wanted to see exposed, sharing the photos and videos, and in many cases, blackmailing them. The Daily Kappa was their weekly news program, sharing constant updates about what was going on in the capping community. This is super weird. It was all publicly available on YouTube for anybody to find, and on Dailymotion, Metacafe, Motherless, and some other places as well, though virtually all of these videos have been deleted by this point. Yeah, because YouTube ain't gonna be happy about that. In the show, they also made references to a newsletter which can only assume was far more explicit than the show designed to be safe for YouTube. Obviously, it's up that something like this existed, but the show was also a bit weird in general. It was clearly made by a member of the camping community, someone who was passionate enough about what they were doing to want to provide news and updates for everyone. They referred to the captured videos as wins or epic wins and were clearly promoting camping in general. However, the show was also written with a healthy dose of contempt directed at all parties involved, and not in a playful or satirical way, like when I broke Simon last episode by referring to him as an asexual entity.
I'm just not that sort of influencer, Kevin.
Obviously, the Daily Kappa was going to show contempt for their victims, who they coldly referred to as cam. But they weren't really much nicer to the Kappas either. Kappas were described on the show as being lonely perverts and P-word that I can't say on YouTube, with a file, which makes sense. I don't really disagree with that sentiment, but since they were the target audience of the show, it seems weird to talk about them like that. Well, these people know what they are, don't they? Don't they? The show also talked about how annoying some of the members were, with one of the names that came up the most being a Kappa by the name of Viper. Whoever was behind the Daily Kappa really seemed to dislike Viper, which is actually going to be important later. Hell, this Viper guy was so annoying, he was even nominated for Most Annoying in the 2010 Kappa Awards, which apparently is a thing. That's right, there was an annual awards show, voted on by the community, and there were several thousand vote casts for each category. A lot of these categories were things you'd expect, like Cam of the Year, Cam Site of the Year, and Blackmailer of the Year. However, the last category shows just how brazen the community was 15 years ago. Yeah, this is the idea that this would be on YouTube today is absurd. You'd expect that the Daily Kappa would predominantly feature YouTube-friendly images of the girls being talked about, but the show used real images and even the real names of the blackmailers whenever possible as well. What are these people doing? You're talking about your crimes online, then having your crimes broadcast in a show. This is insane. I know 15 years feels like an eternity in internet time, so to give some sort of context to how long ago this was, the Jesse Slaughter Consequences Will Never Be the Same incident was nominated for Lul's Moment of the Year in this same show. I have no idea what that is, but I know 15 years ago was what? 2009? That is... It's a ridiculously long time ago in internet world. And I live in internet world. Like, I've been doing this thing as my life, as my career, for like 10 years. Now it's 15 years ago. It seems like forever. Speaking of brazen, one of the other categories was Shocker of the Year, featuring a truly mind-blowing event. Girls meeting their cappers face to face. This is a properly organized thing. This is fucking weird. Obviously, the girls involved, at least not the ones being blackmailed, didn't understand that they were victims in all of this. There was even a couple of the year category because many of the girls believed they were in romantic relationships with the men that were just using them until they got bored. F***ing creepy, dude. But what made this truly shocking, oh Kevin, we are already at truly shocking, just what makes this more shocking is that the couples appeared live on cam together. Grown men showing their faces on live streams with girls as young as 13 who believed the older man was her boyfriend rather than a predator that was collecting and sharing compromising videos of her with his online predator buddies. This is fucked up. Also, you fucking idiots. You be going to prison, dude. These cappers had no problem showing their faces because they thought nobody would ever see. The only people watching these streams were either other cappers or other teenagers, and despite being available for anyone to see, the Daily Capper lived in obscurity. You're insane. It's the internet. Someone is gonna find out, dude. Like, someone is going to be watching that. Someone's going to have recorded it or taken a screenshot or something, and you're going to go to fucking prison. I hope. Let's hope. That was the way it was for years, and that was the way they assumed it was going to remain. Of course, that didn't mean there were never consequences for the cappers' actions. Everything they were doing was super fucking illegal, and whenever one of them got arrested, the Daily Capper was there to broadcast headlines like, "This was arrested yesterday for blackmail," with regards to 21-year-old Trevor Shea sentenced to 33 years in prison. Yes! For exploiting 10 girls aged 13 to 16. That's a nice, heavy prison sentence for you, Trevor. You perv. They also talked about the homeless P-word, Jimmy Lee Cook, a 42-year-old man camping in the woods behind the church and using free public Wi-Fi to coerce girls to upload videos of themselves to YouTube. It took the efforts of multiple law enforcement agencies to track him down, though he was only sentenced to 160 months, that's 13.3 years, despite already having prior convictions like armed robbery. Still, 13.3 years. It's a good sentence. I don't really know what he got up to other than convincing them, up what sort of videos. I don't know how dark this got. I guess if it was really dark, it'd have gotten more time. And what did the Daily Capper, a show dedicated to celebrating, encouraging, and promoting these monsters, call the people who got them arrested? Heroes. YouTuber Time to Smite was even nominated for the 2010 Hero of the Year award for his role in helping police track down and apprehend Jimmy Cook. They were probably calling the people heroes ironically, seeing as this is the same time that the show reported epic win was delivered in the form of 4 13-year-old girls from Blog TV Junior who stripped it all for a room of 300. What is going on? But it honestly is really hard to tell, given the apparent contempt towards so many of the cappers. Whoever's making this seems to have multiple personality disorder. They're encouraging it and hating on it at the same time. I don't understand. Like I said though, this was all supposed to be an obscure corner of the internet, only ever discovered by fans of child exploitation. Despite the numerous arrests of cappers that the show reported on, authorities always seemed to believe they were isolated cases. They never considered, or at least could never prove, that the people they arrested were part of a large organized network of criminals. Well, hang on a minute. Aren't the detectives or police whose job it is to go and find this stuff on the internet, to go onto Google or the dark web or whatever and be like, oh, child exploitation, let's see what this brings up. And you just quickly find your ways to the darkest corners of the internet where you'd find this. This is on the clear web. This isn't some dark web stuff, right? This should be findable. Why aren't the police going out there to find this stuff and then I don't know, doing some organized crime or whatever on it? I mean, organized crime force, task force or whatever. Not actually doing the organized crime themselves, obviously. don't need to clarify that. But that was all going to change on October the 10th, 2012, when 15-year-old Amanda Todd was found in her home in Coquitlam, British Columbia, after hanging herself. The story made international headlines, and all the initial reporting from mainstream media outlets claimed that she was a victim of cyberbullying and harassment. That's certainly true, and the internet has apparently turned kids into fucking monsters, but there was much more to this story than the media seemed to be aware of, even though they wouldn't have had to look very hard to uncover the truth. Amanda was, by and large, an ordinary girl. She was involved in a lot of activities growing up, including swimming, figure skating, cheerleading, gymnastics, and ice hockey. Those things kept her busy, but above all else, she loved to sing. However, she did suffer from some unspecified language-based learning disability. The good news is that her mother, Carol, was a special education teacher, so she was able to recognize that at a very young age. Carol knew that raising Amanda was going to take more time and effort than it would for a typical child, and she was fully prepared for that. The bad news is that knowing a problem exists doesn't make the problem magically go away, so Amanda struggled academically. This rather predictably resulted in a lot of bullying and taunting from her classmates. Some of her teachers even assumed that she was just a bad child because they were either unaware or dispassionate toward Amanda's disability. What they saw as her misbehaving or being disobedient was just Amanda's inability to communicate what she wanted to say. Eventually, she was able to work past this difficulty with teachers, but it still made those early years of school undoubtedly miserable, and the bullying about her grades never stopped as she got older, as Amanda consistently remained at the bottom of her class. Like I said though, above all else, Amanda loved to sing. That was the entire reason she started visiting campsites in the first place, as it gave her a chance to sing in front of an audience and hopefully make some friends. On September the 6th, 2012, just a month before her suicide, Amanda created a YouTube channel, The Somebody to Know. The next day, she uploaded her first video to the channel. Anyone that knew her probably would have assumed that she'd upload videos of her singing, but that's not what this was. Amanda didn't say a word. Instead, she stood in front of the camera for 9 minutes, filming herself in black and white as she held up a stack of papers, turning them one by one. It was the piece of the puzzle that all those news outlets missed, and what would have made it clear to them that this was much more than just a case of online bullying. The video was titled, My Story: Struggling, Bullying, Suicide, Self-Harm. While I normally don't like to include long quotes when I can avoid it, I've decided that rather than paraphrase the video, it'd be best to let Amanda tell you her story in her own words and in its entirety, as everything she wrote was true, and without exaggeration. Hello. I've decided to tell you about my never-ending story. In 7th grade, I would go with friends on webcam, meet and talk to new people. Then got called stunning, beautiful, perfect, etc. They wanted me to flash, so I did. 1 year later, I got a message on Facebook from him. Don't know how he knew me. It said, if you don't put on a show for me, I will send your boobs. He knew my address, school, relatives, family names. Christmas break. Knock at my door at 4 a.m. It was the police. My photo was sent to everyone. I then got really sick and got anxiety, major depression, panic disorder. I then moved and got into drugs and alcohol. My anxiety got worse, couldn't go out. A year passed, and the guy came back with my new list of friends and school, but made a Facebook page. My boobs were his profile pic. Cried every night, lost all my friends and respect people had for me. Again. Then nobody liked me. Name-calling, judged. I can never get that photo back. It's out there forever. I started cutting. I promised myself never again. Didn't have any friends, and I sat at lunch alone, so I moved schools again. Everything was better, even though I still sat alone at lunch in the library every day. After a month, I started talking to an old guy friend. We back and forth texted, and he started to say he liked me, led me on. He had a girlfriend. Then he said, come over, my girlfriend's on vacation. So I did. Huge mistake. He hooked up with me. I thought he liked me. 1 week later, I got a text, get out of your school. His girlfriend and 15 others came, including himself. The girl and 2 others just said, look around. Nobody likes you. In front of my new school. 50 people. A guy then yelled, just punch her already. So she did. She threw me to the ground and punched me several times. Kids filmed it. I was all alone and left on the ground. It felt like a joke in this world. I thought nobody deserved this. I was alone. I lied and said it was my fault and my idea. I didn't want him getting hurt. I thought he really liked me. But he just wanted the sex. Someone yelled, punch her already. Teachers ran over, but I just went and laid in a ditch. and my dad found me. I wanted to die so bad. When he brought me home, I drank bleach. It killed me inside, and I thought I was going to actually die. Ambulance came and brought me to the hospital and flushed me. After I got home, all I saw was on Facebook, "She deserved it. Did you wash the mud out of your hair? I hope she's dead." Nobody cared. I moved away to another city, to my mum's, another school. I didn't want to press charges because I wanted to move on. 6 months had gone by. People are pasting pictures of bleach, Clorox, and ditches, tagging me. I was doing a lot better. They said she should try a different bleach. I hope she dies this time and isn't so stupid. They said I hope she sees this and kills herself. Why do I get this? I messed up, but why follow me? I left your guy's city. I'm constantly crying now. Every day, I think, why am I still here? My anxiety is horrible now. Never went out this summer. All from my past. Life's never getting better. Can't go to school, meet or be with people. Constantly cutting. I'm really depressed. I'm on antidepressants now and counseling a month ago this summer. I overdosed. In hospital for 2 days. I'm stuck. What's left of me now? Nothing stops. I have no body. I need someone. My name is Amanda Todd. And the long quote ends. This video then showed an image of Amanda's arms covered in freshly bleeding cuts, followed by a picture of a bandaged wrist with hope written on the bandage. The final image was Amanda's arm with the words "Stay Strong" written in marker, inspired by singer Demi Lovato's wrist tattoos she'd gotten the previous year. Amanda had been begging her parents to let her get it as a real tattoo for her 16th birthday, but she never got the chance. Instead, a month after her death, just before what would have been her 16th birthday, Amanda's father, Norman, got the tattoo instead, even having some of her ashes mixed in with the tattoo ink. This tragic chain of events had begun about 3 years earlier, when a 12-year-old Amanda would stream herself singing, unaware that her audience was full of predators. They eventually convinced her to flash the camera. One of the cappers saved the image and tried to use it to blackmail Amanda into performing a private show for him, but she refused. Even if she'd given in to the blackmail, it's unlikely that things would have gone differently anyway. The typical modus operandi for these blackmailers was to threaten girls into performing private shows for them, using each subsequent recording as further blackmail to push the victims into doing more and more. Then, once the blackmailers got tired of them, they would release all the saved content to the victims' friends and families anyway. It didn't help matters. Once the picture of Amanda had been saved, it quickly spread through the capping community like so many other images. She was mentioned in the December 19th, 2010 episode of The Daily Capper, only encouraging more predators to go and harass her. It seems that Amanda had been made aware of the show, and she tried to leave a comment saying that the show should report on the fact that she had gone to the police who were looking out for the man trying to blackmail her. The channel required manual approval for every comment, so her attempt to contact the show wasn't made public until almost 2 years later. And what she said was true, at least as far as she knew. Her family had gone to the police multiple times, so she certainly had reason to believe that the police were all over this. Unfortunately, that couldn't be further from the truth. Each time Amanda's parents went to the RCMP, they were told that there was nothing they could do. The closest they came to being able to help was suggesting that Amanda stay off the internet. Do your job. About a year after she first changed schools, Amanda was contacted on Facebook by someone by the name of Tyler Boo. He identified himself as the person that had blackmailed her originally, and he attempted to again, threatening to repeat what had happened at her previous school. When she moved again, this time he did it under the name Austin Collins. This piece of shit would pose as an incoming transfer student who was moving there the following week, using that as a guise to friend as many people at Amanda's new school as possible. Once he made contact with as many of her classmates and teachers as he could, he would then spread her images to all of them, resulting in a new cycle of bullying. But this was much worse than just schoolyard bullying, like the news stories had originally portrayed it. Although clearly bullying has changed a lot since I was a kid as well. I can't even fathom what the was wrong with her classmates that would be actively encouraging someone to kill themselves, especially after Amanda switched schools. This girl hadn't even been at the school long enough for anyone to know her, let alone hate her, yet they were genuinely trying to get her to commit suicide. It does seem very bizarre. Like, kids can be dicks, but holy shit. But as fucked up and as unconscionable as all of this bullying from classmates was, it was all the result of targeted harassment, stalking, and blackmail from a grown-ass adult. And the police were powerless to do anything about it, up until the day that she took her own life. Even afterwards, the RCMP seemed to be completely useless. So much so that others had to step in, including Anonymous. Anonymous is that giant hacking collective or whatever, and they like do some crazy stuff, but also some awesome stuff. And I get the feeling this is going to be one of their awesome things. So let's go. Within days of Amanda's death, Anonymous released a short video in which they named Vancouver resident Cody Maxson as Amanda's killer. They're so fucking quick. Along with a link to various documentation meant to prove the claim. Cody was picked up by the police, but they declined to press charges. They instead officially listed Cody as not a person of interest. Okay, was this a rare miss by Anonymous? This pissed off a whole lot of people because the name Cody Maxson hadn't appeared out of thin air. Cody, real name Dakota William Shane Maxson, was better known as Cody 1206, and Cody 1206 was better known as the Daily Capper's Blackmailer of the Year 2010. After being released, Cody instead pointed the finger at Viper, claiming that he was Amanda's real blackmailer. In a shocking turn of events, the Daily Capper decided to officially weigh in. After the 2010 Capper Awards, there had only been a single show in January of 2011, and then another on Halloween that year. For reasons unknown, whoever had been behind the show decided to pack it in, probably hoping to avoid legal liability in a case just like this one. Yeah, dude. You're criming it up so hard, allegedly. Shortly after Amanda's death, the Daily Capper returns after over a year of silence for one final show. Even though Cody had been Blackmailer of the Year and Viper was considered one of the most annoying, hated people in the community, the show was dedicated to declaring Viper's innocence and helping prove Cody's guilt. One of their pieces of evidence was an anonymous email that they had received, and it read, "I just got the full docs of Cody 1206, blackmailer of many like Peyton Amanda, blah blah blah. Cody Maxson dedicated a huge portion of one of your shows to him, and the details in that pic. Will get lots of attention, and eventually a lulzy arrest." What was so interesting was that the email was sent back in December of 2010, nearly 2 full years before Amanda's death, and the person was already claiming Cody as Amanda's blackmailer. The picture in the email contained the same information that was eventually released by Anonymous. Whoever was behind the show seemed absolutely convinced of Cody's guilt, as was Anonymous, and basically the entire internet. So why did the police let Cody go? Well, they didn't let him go completely. After all, he was still Blackmailer of the Year and a massive piece of shit. Even if he wasn't responsible for blackmailing Amanda, he had blackmailed a whole lot of other young girls. On October the 15th, 2012, Cody was charged with sexual assault and sexual interference of a person under 16. However, you won't find any information about a conviction related to these charges. In fact, those charges no longer show up in public records at all. Cody has a 2012 conviction that effectively amounts to petty theft, and another in 2015 for trespassing. But there are no other records related to arrests or convictions for him. Yet what you will find are a whole lot of records about changing conditions of parole dating back to 2013. So despite Cody collecting and distributing nude images of underage girls and blackmailing dozens of them at minimum, he was free and on parole in a year. And it's at this point, what the fuck, Canada? That's beyond infuriating. And it probably has you wondering what the hell the police are doing up there in Canada. Indeed it does, Kevin. While lenient prison sentences often defy reason, for once I can actually explain why he got off so easy. Okay, let's see. To start, when Cody won the award for Blackmailer of the Year, he was only 16 or 17 years old. Since he was 19 when Amanda died, he's always talked about as an adult. But for most of this, he was a minor as well. That doesn't change the fact that what he did was completely fucking disgusting and deserves punishment, but does it deserve the same punishment as the 42 we mentioned getting arrested earlier? Because Cody's crimes were so horrible, I actually don't know the morally correct answer to that, but typically there is some amount of leniency granted for crimes a person committed as a minor. Yes, like, stepping back from this specific situation, I absolutely think that there should be milder punishments for younger people because their brains haven't finished cooking yet. They make stupid decisions because they're young. And at some point, we have to work out what the cutoff is. And I think it's pretty low at 18, to be honest. I think there's pretty dumb 20-somethings who just get up to stupid shit. But at some point, you've got to make the cutoff. So yes, I do think, do I want to comment on this particular case? Absolutely not. This guy's a piece of shit. However, there was something else at play here, something far more important. Anonymous, the Daily Capper, and Public Opinion all got it wrong, and the police really were right. According to an IT expert who investigated the case at the time, Cody Maxson was essentially a fictitious person created to throw investigators off the scent. That probably sounds confusing. It does. Didn't Cody's been arrested? Since Cody was a real person that we've just been talking about, so let me explain. All of the digital evidence used to tie the alias Cody Maxson to Amanda's blackmail was anonymous and untraceable. And if you're going to use an alias to commit crimes, why not just use the same alias as someone else who is already committing those exact crimes? No, that is pretty fucking clever. While you're at it, why not gather up a bunch of evidence linking their alias to your crimes, combine it with an actual dox of that person, then email it to a news show that enjoys mocking these people whenever they get arrested. And if that doesn't work, just send that information to Anonymous and let them handle it. So even though Cody was a disgusting piece of shit who ruined a lot of girls' lives, in Amanda's case, he was actually being framed. And that, in addition to being a minor for a lot of this, is why Cody got off so light, because he turned state witness to help bring down someone even worse than he was. Yeah, as soon as I heard that, I was like immediately, yeah, but okay, so who's the real piece of shit then? He better be going to prison. And here we go. That man was 33-year-old Aiden Coburn, a dual citizen of Turkey and the Netherlands. Aiden's treatment of Amanda was nothing new for him, as he would frequently torment his victims for years on end. Uh-oh. This is going to be complicated because he needs to get that extradition going real fast and end up in a American prison. Let's get him there. Come on. I imagine the Netherlands has a pretty good extradition policy with the United States. Not so sure about Turkey. Let's find out. However, while a lot of the cappers were careless and easy to apprehend, Aiden was much more tech savvy. Not only did he have hundreds of dummy email addresses and Facebook accounts, but he obscured his real location using proxy servers, kind of like VPNs, but not as secure. He would also wipe all of his browsing history and cookies every time he left his computer to make himself harder to track. Even once it reached the point where authorities were certain of Aiden's guilt, they were having difficulty finding proof. That was when controversial tactics had to be utilized. A covert team of Dutch police broke into Aiden's home when he wasn't there and installed keylogging software onto his computer, allowing them to remotely see everything that he typed. Once they were able to monitor his online activities, they were able to get a proper warrant. Wait, they didn't get a proper warrant to track his keylogs? That seems like that is a really good way to get this case thrown out of court. I assume they must have had a warrant for that. And the evidence they uncovered was massive. Not only was there a lot of illegal pornography, but Aiden had a database of 5,800 names and associated social media accounts, all representing potential targets. He was arrested in 2014 at the age of 35, and he was charged with extortion, internet luring, criminal harassment, and possession and distribution of I can't say this on YouTube, but like images of young people which are not appropriate. There we go. It took almost 3 years for the case to go to trial, and some of the charges were dropped, but Aiden was convicted in the Netherlands on charges of internet fraud and blackmailing involving 39 victims. I want him to go to America. Like, the person he was committing crimes against was an American, so I'm sure there's some American crime there. And, like, love you, Netherlands, but I don't imagine your prison is as rough as American prison. And I'd like him to go to American prison, please. Which was by no means a comprehensive list. Among those victims who were excluded from this trial was Amanda. Instead, oh no, it's Canada, isn't it? It's not America. We're not even talking about America. Oh, come on, let's send him to America anyway. Oh no. Or maybe Turkish prison. That sounds tough. Instead, Canadian authorities requested Aiden's extradition so that he could be tried in Canada. And in the Netherlands, he was sentenced to 10 years and 8 months for his crimes, which seems really low given the number of victims and the extent of his torture. Yeah, that's why I was like, get him overseas. In 2020, Aiden was finally extradited to Canada while still serving his sentence to go on trial again for his crimes against Amanda. He was found guilty on all 4 counts: extortion, child luring, criminal harassment, and distribution of her photos. He was sentenced to 13 years in prison. Unfortunately, even though the trial was held in Canada, the sentence was to be served in the Netherlands. This meant that there had to be a conversion hearing where they basically ensured that the sentence is in line with the laws of the country where the prisoner will be serving. And it wasn't. It was decided that under Dutch law, Aiden would only serve 6 years for his crimes against Amanda. You can see why I wanted him to get out of Europe, right? He's committing those crimes elsewhere. Get him in those countries. Like Canada's, that's a proper sentence. 13 years, too low, but 6 years, way too low, the Netherlands. Come on now. All Amanda had wanted to do was make friends and sing for people. But instead, she was taken advantage of, exploited, and tormented to the point of taking her own life. And for his actions that can only be equated with murder, the Dutch legal system believes that 13 years is too much for Aiden to spend in prison, despite showing a complete and total lack of remorse for his actions. He is set to be released from prison before this decade is over. all that can be done now is to hope he doesn't make it that long. Yeah, these guys don't do well in prison. And let's hope he doesn't. There's a lot of violent criminals behind bars who have children of their own. Children that they love. And you know what they do to guys like him in prison? Maybe one of them will wind up nominated for Hero of the Year. Brilliant ending to today's episode, Kevin. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear viewer or listener, for watching. And I'll see you next time.